Hey, what is going on, everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and in this video here, we're back over at the PlayStation 4 because I'm going to be showing you all how to utilize a payload which is pretty quick, easy, and useful for many people who might want to do a more robust job of blocking internet connections on their console. Now, this is something I've covered a bit before in a previous video in which I was discussing how you can block and prevent firmware updates on your PlayStation 4. I would recommend still checking that out if you haven't already done so, because it does give several different options, including installing an update blocker payload, which means even if we download a firmware update, put it on a USB drive, and try to install it on the PS4, it will still fail. However, one of the methods I showed involved setting up a custom DNS, which is what many people end up utilizing. The problem is that does not work for everybody, and there's also people who understandably have some apprehension connecting to a public DNS. Not only you might not know exactly what's happening on that DNS, but additionally, what if it goes down? What if there's an issue? What if it changes hands? Well, there's a way that we can really limit all of that to the console itself here using the nanoDNS payload. For those who do not know about it or have not heard about it, it is described right here by developer Drakmor as a minimal PS4, PS5 payload DNS proxy that does several things right here. There's a nice list of technical items right here, but even if you don't understand this here, essentially what this does is it allows you to set your own DNS on your system to the localhost entry, and from there, nanoDNS ends up reading everything from a nanodns.ini file, which looks a little something like this. This essentially is saying that your DNS server is your localhost, but when nanoDNS is running, you are still able to access the internet, but it is going to block PlayStation connectivity, meaning that you will not be able to download firmware updates or game updates on here. Again, the main benefit of this is that you're relying on everything on the system itself, and you're not reliant on an external DNS server. For example, if you go over to settings, go over to network, and this is what people typically do, because this is also what I recommend. You can go to set up internet connection, set up your connection there, go to custom. Then when you go over to the DNS settings here, people typically use this DNS, 62.210.38.117. However, one main issue is that some people, depending on their network or ISP, actually end up having setups that do not respect this custom DNS entry on the console, meaning that this will be ignored. You'll still have PlayStation connectivity, and there's a lot of people who end up accidentally updating their games, applications, or even worse, they end up updating their system. So this is going to make it a little more bulletproof here, and it's pretty simple to set up. Now, you will need a few things here. First of all, you are going to need your jailbroken PlayStation 4 up and running and working, and it needs to be able to get into a jailbreakable state. We're also going to be using the GoldHEN payload for this. You can use other HEN payloads, but we're going to be making use of the Payloader within GoldHEN, which is going to make this even better. And for our last things, we're also going to need a USB drive in order to grab and transfer the payload if you don't want to use FTP, and it would also be recommended to use PS4 Explorer 2.0. I'm going to show you how to transfer everything internally. With all that, let's go ahead and go over to our computer or another device which will allow us to download the ELF file. Now, this is the official GitHub repository for nanoDNS, and if there's any information you want to read about what it does here, or you want to support drakmor directly, there is plenty of information and methods on how to do this here. There's also the configuration which shows the default nanoDNS INI which is created, and even more information here. So if you want to customize this to your heart's content, you're able to do so. And if you have no idea what any of this is and you just want to make your system secure, well, just follow along here. What you can do is navigate over to the GitHub repository, go over to releases, and download the latest build of nanoDNS. Do keep in mind that it's available on PS5 and PS4. Since we're going to be doing this on the PS4, be sure to download the PS4 specific version. From what I see here, it is going to specifically say in the file name that it is for PS4. Download that and save it somewhere you can easily find it. Hook up a USB drive, and as per usual on the PS4, make sure the file system is either exFAT or FAT32. Either one will work. Now navigate into the USB drive and create a new folder. In case you don't have it already, create a new one and call it Payloads. Once you have the Payloads folder, enter into that folder and copy and paste your nanoDNS payload. Once it's been copied over, that's really all it is, so you can exit out here, right click, eject your USB drive, and now take it over to your PS4. Now back over at your PS4, in order to get started here, we need to configure it slightly. It's not all too much effort, thankfully. Now it would be optimal if you could do this before you run the jailbreak, but even if you run it after, that's totally fine. It'll just be more relevant before running the jailbreak. But either way, what you can do is once your PS4 is up and running, navigate over to your settings, go down to network, go to setup internet connection, and here pick whichever connection type you're going to be using. I'm personally going to use a LAN cable. This time around we're going to do custom. And as for usual, for IP address settings, typically pick automatic unless you know what you want to set yours to. You can do manual, but otherwise just do automatic. Do not specify DHCP hostname, and we're going to do a manual DNS. Now right here, we're going to change our primary DNS to the localhost, which is going to be 127.0.0.1. Once you do that, hit done, and that's all we need to change on here. This will make sure that we're looping everything back, all of our connectivity, to the PS4 itself, which I'll show you what that does. We can go to next, automatic is fine, do not use, test internet connection. You should get an IP address successfully pretty quickly, but everything else is going to fail out as expected. Once that's done, we can exit out of here, and I'm going to show you all that this should be working as expected. If you want to, you can use the internet browser, or you can go back to your settings, go to the user's guide, and if you don't have anything cached here, you can go over to your user's guide, check this out, and here we go. It will say cannot connect to server because it can't connect to anything. So at this point, we can't access anything over the internet on our console, but that's what we're going to be able to fix. The next thing we now need is we can exit out of here, and we can now jailbreak the system itself. Use whichever preferred option you have here, and it would be most optimal to use GoldHEN. And I'll show you why in the Payloader settings. For this, I'm personally going to use View After Free. So go ahead and load up your jailbreak. Now there we go, it's been jailbroken, and you can see here the minimum version you should be on for GoldHEN should be version 2.4 beta 18.10. You need to be on minimum that version of GoldHEN, and if you have not updated your GoldHEN, or if you need to do that, I also have another video showing how you can update GoldHEN pretty easily. Now once the PS4 has been jailbroken, go ahead, take your USB drive and plug it in. After it's been plugged in, I'll show you what we're going to do here. Navigate up here, go all the way to the GoldHEN menu, go over to the utilities section, and there should be a newer option there called Payloader. Within Payloader, go to Launchpad, and you should be able to see the nanoDNS PS4 ELF file in your USB drive. However, even though this is great, this is available here, we can run it here, but we would have to keep the USB drive plugged in at all times. And since we're going to be using something that is pretty useful and important, it would be better to put it on the internal drive. So to do that, we can do that directly on the system here using PS4 Explorer. Navigate into PS4 Explorer. Now here, we're going to go into root access. And for this, we can scroll down to MNT, and we're going to be looking for our USB drive. So you might have to play around with the ports, but it's this one here. Mine ended up being USB 0. And there's going to be this payloads directory. Hit the triangle button and go down to either cut or copy. I'm going to choose to copy it out. Next, we're going to exit all the way back to the root here, go into the data directory, and within data, press the triangle button and hit paste. So there we go, we're going to have our payloads directory right there, and we're also going to have our nanoDNS payload. With that done, go ahead and remove your USB drive since we won't need it, and we can now close out of PS4 Explorer. Now that that's been closed, navigate back up here to your GoldHEN menu, go to Utilities, go into the Payloader, go into Launchpad, and check it out. We now have an internal one because you can see that the path has changed. It's now pulling it from data, payloads, nanoDNS, PS4. And by the way, if there's any other payloads you want to put internally on the system, they'll go into that same directory. So now that we have this available, what I'd recommend doing is pressing the square button while highlighting this. What that's going to do is it's going to add it to your auto run queue. If you X out of here and check the auto run queue, this is going to launch nanoDNS by default whenever you jailbreak the system. So there we go, we have it all set up. And now I'll go ahead and show you all how it should work once we have everything running. So we can go ahead, X out of here, and let's restart the PlayStation 4. Alright, now with our system rebooted, everything in place as it should be, and no jailbreak loaded, let's go ahead and see how everything chains together, because this will be how it should look and operate now that you have nanoDNS set up. Again, I'm going to show you all that I do not have internet on this system, no jailbreak is running, I am connected to my network, but if I try to access any website, I get an error like this, cannot connect to server, which is expected. So now let's go ahead and jailbreak the system. For this, I'm going to be using View After Free, but use whichever option you would prefer. So there we go, it's closed. We are going to get our GoldHEN message. So again, beta 18.10 has loaded in. You just need that or something higher, and we're going to go through our notifications here because there is going to be a new one. And here we go, nanoDNS has shown up. It is running on our localhost over port 53. So again, if you ever want to change this here, you can go over to GoldHEN, go over to the utilities, Payloader, Launchpad. This is where you can launch any of the individual payloads, but the auto run queue is where you can even remove it or put it on if you want to. That's just how you find all of that. Now, in order to actually see that we have internet access, I'll go ahead and navigate over to the Homebrew store, and I can show you all just making sure this actually loads in. Now, once we had everything loaded in here, it is connected, and I'm just waiting to see the updates there. I should have one available. Yep, I do have one update, so I can navigate over, and I do have an update for Apollo's save tool. So I can navigate over here, hit update now, and check this out. It's a quick one, but it is able to successfully connect to the internet and download and then install this. And there we go. That's all been completed. So we are good at that point. I can also navigate to the store itself, so I can scroll through the different pages. Some of them I have cached, but this one here I don't have cached, for example, so it needs to go in and look for everything. But you can see this is loaded up successfully. Now what I'm going to do is close out of here, and there's maybe something else that we can try. I'll actually navigate up here, go over to settings, and I'm just straight up going to go to the update section, so system software update. And check this out, it still cannot connect to the server. So we are not able to connect, which is expected, but even though we are set up on the localhost, everything is being passed through nanoDNS setup on here. So we really have our own DNS server and DNS blocking capabilities directly on the system itself. If you ever want to change this or modify it, by the way, I'll show you how to do that. We can go right back into PS4 Explorer, and there is one specific file we need to look for. It would be within root access, data, the nanoDNS folder, and there's a nanodns.ini file right here. And check this out, you can either edit this yourself on here on the PS4, or if you want a better option, it might be better to even edit it over FTP and transfer it back over. But you can see right here, this is the default one, and this is all the settings that it puts in place. So just from a quick read here, you can see that the bind is set to the localhost, but then if you go over to upstream, for example, these are the actual DNS servers that it's routing its traffic through. However, this works as expected because in the override section here, you see all of these domains that are related to Sony, for example, are all just being thrown to 0.0.0.0, meaning if you try to connect to any of these URLs and domains, you're not going to be able to get anywhere. It's really just going to go into a black hole. There's also exceptions set here as well. So let's see if there is a domain here that you want to have blocked, but you do still want to access some parts of it like a subdomain. You can throw them into the exceptions, which is exactly what nanoDNS does. So there we go. We have our setup like that. From there, we are able to block all of that traffic, but we are still able to get online while at the same time, again, no longer relying on a public or a separate or an external DNS server because we really just have our own DNS server configured and set up on the PlayStation 4 itself, which is pretty great. Either way, that is about it for this video here. Hopefully it helped out. Hopefully you were able to get situated, set up here, and now you have a nice little domain and URL blocker built into the system itself as opposed to relying on an external server. Especially if you're one of those unlucky folks who has a network setup which does not respect the actual DNS configuration you put on a system, this will be even better. Either way, that is about it for this video here. This is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, a like would absolutely be appreciated, and if you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well too.